Hopefully you've had a really interesting session today. I know we've not really talked about the topic of private 5G as much today, so it's great I've had the opportunity. And really what I want to spend some time with you today is really introduce you to the topic of private 5G for some of you that might not be familiar with it from the broader tech ecosystem. Some of the perspectives from Virgin Media O2, what have we been trying so far? What has been working? What has been some of our lessons learned? And then really share with you our perspective on the critical role of industry partnerships as well, and some of the partnerships that we've recently announced and shared, and then land and end with some use cases and case studies. So I'm going to share a couple of examples of private 5G in real life, and then you'll hopefully get to hear from one of our customers as well through a little video at the end. So hopefully over the half an hour, we'll probably keep it to about 15-20 minutes, and then keep it interactive as well and get some of your thoughts and questions if that sounds okay as well. And yeah, as Annie said, Sandeep Raithatha. So I'm actually from Virgin Media O2 from the business part, so the B2B parts, not sitting within the network or technology division. And I'm leading on strategy, innovation of 5G IoT. So I've been leading the developments of the products and solutions that we take to market, leveraging our network. And as this is a broad crowd with a European presence as well, just a little bit of an introduction as well. So if you're not familiar with Virgin Media O2, it's two great brands that have come together just over 3 years ago. And so you had O2, which was owned by Telefonica, one of the leading providers of mobile connectivity. And as you can see on that slide, 45.1 million connections to date, and offering a whole range of mobility services to the consumer and business market, and a number of MVNO brands like the likes of Sky and Tesco Mobile and giffgaff, if you've heard of those. And that was owned by Telefonica. And then we had Virgin Media, owned by Liberty Global, and they have an amazing, super fast connectivity network with 5.8 million connections. And so we've really brought these together to bring a truly supercharged network. And it's been 3 years on our joint venture. So both organizations coming together in a JV structure. And that's great because you'll get to hear about what's the importance of bringing mobile and fixed connectivity when we get to private networks as well. So when you think about private and public networks, let's start with what are they, just to set the scene and give you a bit of a level field. So you've got the public network today, which is, as we said, there's 45 million customers connected to that. It's a national network with tens of thousands of sites, and effectively it's used by every one of you, that's an O2 customer or one of our partners, to make calls, access data, send messages. And you can do that pretty much across the UK and do that well. And then, of course, alongside that is this new initiative that you've heard more and more about. It's often called mobile private networks, private 5G, MPNs often as well, many names. But private networks, how I like to describe them, is that it's a miniature version of that national network. So that national network will be spread across a whole range of data centers in complex sites around the UK. A private network is actually a miniature version that can actually reside on a customer site. And it's really more focused around the data part, so getting 5G connectivity, which offers that super fast latency or ultra low latency, high bandwidth connectivity just for a customer as well. So when you think about private 5G and why it's such an important topic for business customers, and a potential to really drive that digital transformation, and that's a word I'll mention a few times today, it's the way I like to think about it. It has three characteristics. So firstly, it's dedicated, so it all resides at the moment on premise, so it's a mini mobile network that will sit on that customer site, and eventually there'll be other variants and options that will allow to leverage the national network, and I'll share an example of that nearer the end. It's really secure because with the data can be stays on premise even with edge computing. So if you're running in a factory or a particular type of environment, you can really secure your data and have full control and what they call often data residency as well. And as it is a dedicated network, all the industry has been providing these with lots of careful planning. So as we go and deploy these mini mobile networks to our customers, we go in and design them. So having a look at the entire space inside and out and make sure we optimize the network. So, every single centimeter of that factory, that site, that plant, that campus has that excellent 5G connectivity. So you have connectivity everywhere you need. So it's fairly tailored, I'd say, and it's really customized from that perspective. And so with that as a bit of an introduction into what private 5G is, and hopefully that's helped for those that have not come across that topic before, we're already seeing lots of interesting sectors starting to adopt it as well. So to date, we've had some early adopters, and I think for me, the early ones we've seen have definitely been manufacturing, transport, logistics, and utilities. And these have really been the early adopter verticals, despite definitely all those macroeconomic headwinds that we've all been facing as businesses as well. And when you think about these organizations, as you can see, some of these are very industrial as well. And they vary by a lot. So, you can have a factory, which could be a small campus or site producing goods and items, to airports and ports, and you're starting to see many of those that are needing connectivity, which is often in an outdoor space, to science parks and campuses, to oil plants and mining sites, to logistics and warehouses as well. And so often when you think about these organizations' topics, it's not traditionally your office or your event space like this that would need private 5G. It's really industrial environments or environments where there's a requirement for dedicated connectivity that can then enable that transformation. And in reality, what are the value drivers as well? So if you think about it, for many of these organizations, they're all trying to do some of the similar things. There's a crossover of 3 drivers, it's fair to say. One of them is in some of those mission-critical environments, is really improving health and safety. So when we speak to many of these customers in these sectors for Virgin Media O2, the number one objective is making sure their employees and their staff get home in the evening, right? So how can they avoid critical or fatal incidents in the workplace? How can they avoid trips, slips, and falls in an environment that is very industrial? And what ways can they deploy technology to manage that? And of course, then reduce the risk on site. Second is, how do they automate? So since the pandemic, many have had to work through how do they operate and automate in a 24/7 environment with less dependency sometimes on people. So thinking about how can they do that with more technology and innovation and effectively become more productive as well. And then the third lever we've often found with these organizations, they're all working on the same metric of driving a better sustainable organization as well. So how do they reduce waste and become more sustainable in the energy, the output that they're generating as well? And these seem to be like the 3, I'd say, cut-over examples as well. And so when you think about that and the term digital transformation journey, these organizations and the ones I mentioned, they all have to go through a bit of a transformation journey. And the first few slides I've talked about, it's all talked about 5G. And I'm sure in our next panel, the panel after, we're going to talk about the future of 5G Advanced. And then I'm sure we'll talk about 6G as well. And, we've heard today there's been lots of conversations on AI and many things. But when you think about it, and from our experience, sharing back to this forum and fellow operators as well, when we're talking to large enterprise customers, many are not really even that aware of the different technologies, depending on who you're talking to. And when you're talking to operational directors or CFOs and other organizations, they're not really thinking about, okay, I need some 5G connectivity, I need some Wi-Fi, I need some fixed. Really, they have a number of business challenges, and they really want to understand how we, as an industry, are going to help them solve those with real clear outcomes. So, our goal and our pivot from when 5G first arrived was, start, instead of leading with 5G and telling everyone how amazing 5G is with all the great characteristics, is actually, let's not start our conversations with 5G. Let's understand the business challenges and then think about how 5G might enable some of that. And the way we've been doing that is really talking about a digital transformation journey. And so I can share that with you and bring that to life. So firstly, if you think about it, with any of those environments, let's talk about a manufacturing site. You're going to have a workforce distributed around a site. And I'll share an example with British Sugar later. But if you have a big operational plant, you need to have your workers better connected so they can access the operational plant tools and systems, and they can make changes in real time. And in a traditional environment without great connectivity, they'll be often going back and forth, monitoring particular sites, machinery, and then making adjustments in a control room. So, the ideal challenge for them is how can they have connectivity to their systems anywhere and make changes in real time, driving productivity and accuracy. And so that's the first use case, connected worker. And that's what most organizations might really just want. They might not want the fancy robotics or the drones flying around. They may just want to drive some better productivity improvements by having some great connectivity and what we call the connected worker. And then you'll see the icons have come out, but we'll share the slides after as well, I think, as they copied and pasted. But the second is many organizations, whether that's a hospital, a factory, or a port, will have a lot of distributed assets. And in reality, the biggest challenge our customers are finding is they need to understand where their assets are, the volume of assets, so they reduce the wastage, shrinkage in retail and distribution environments, and also optimize on these large complex sites how their staff go and pick up those assets as well. So having better control of those assets and giving that visibility with better inventory management is the immediate next use case and example as well. And then you can start to, the list goes on, but you can then start to bring assets and people together and augment that with information as well. But of course, once you get all that information, and this is where I'll mention AI for the first time, and you see I lasted at least 10 minutes before mentioning that word. But really, once you get the data, you can then start to look at predictive maintenance and technologies like computer vision to monitor spaces and start to drive actionable insights as well. And it's only then when you can start to then see what often many people talk about and lead with, which is the automation, right? So automating with automated guided vehicles, robots, drones for inspection. All these types of use cases, we need the level of data, the awareness of the people around the site, and that's really where the end goal is. And that's when you get to that point, that's when you'll get that true transformation. And most of these capabilities and solutions will then be enabled by 5G. So that will be then the end goal. But when you hear, we talk about some of the challenges and outcomes, you can see many of these, some of these may not even need 5G, but 5G could probably act as an anchor. And then the other point to share is when we've been talking with customers and engaging with the industry, I think about Virgin Media O2 and many telcos and tech companies trying to solve so many of these challenges with our customers. It's not something we can do alone, right? So I think we've acknowledged as well, to enable that digital transformation, you really need strategic partnerships. So you can't be naive to think one UK operator or a global operator can provide an end-to-end solution in a port, in a hospital, in a factory. When industries are very specific, you need domain expertise, you need to understand the internal systems, the processes, and you need to have the devices, understand the environments you're working in. So one of the things we did and just announced last month is working through the actual supply chain and on our value chain of Industry 4.0 and private networks is who could we work with to complement the great connectivity we can offer. So, I've spent a fair bit of time talking about Virgin Media O2 and, we're providing that robust, reliable 5G private connectivity dedicated on site. And, we have all that expertise from that global network, where millions are connecting to. So, we've got that nailed and we know how to deliver mobile networks. But the gap we have is often all those industries that I shared earlier, many of those have very niche and specific industry requirements and solutions. And you've got to often talk the language, you've got to engage with a different set of stakeholders to who we're providing connectivity to as well. So, we've really acknowledged that that's one of our challenges. And to address that, we recently announced, if you saw in the press, a partnership with Accenture. And that's really to create a one-stop shop. So how can we combine our strengths in providing connectivity with Accenture's strong industry knowledge, understanding the whole range of industry verticals with their industry practice, and then taking some of their capability as well, whether it's their edge platforms, their orchestration platforms, and their partnership ecosystem as well. So when you combine both partnership ecosystems, you can create quite a compelling end-to-end one-stop solution as well. So since we announced that in May, we've been engaging with a number of our clients, some of those actually together, where we both have customers, and really helping them, first of all, as I said, lead with the digital transformation, the solutions, and how we can help them solve particular problems with our solutions, and then leading into connectivity and how we might work there. So, the power of 1 + 1 is 3 is this is a great example. I think there's many more types of partnerships and collaborations I think that need to form to really make private 5G and monetization of 5G really, really valuable as well. And to bring this to life just a little bit further as well, one example, and I was trying to think of what could be an analogy to bring together a combined offering. And initially I thought, how about explaining it as a pizza? But instead I went for a very traditional house analogy. So if you think about private 5G and the connectivity, it's really an enabler, right? So not every enterprise is really sitting there thinking, I need to call my operator and I need 5G. Most just see that as a hidden enabler, a foundation, but it's not a conversation. It was a conversation starter, but it's not anymore. But in reality, where we think about 5G is a foundation to that house, that offering. And then if you think about the platforms that can bring together all the data, all the information, if you think about it as flooring of that house or the base of that house as well, and that's where you have edge computing, really to bring together and provide like a single pane of glass to that customer where they might have a whole range of industry applications. And these are some of the applications that we've been working with our partners as well, whether that's connecting workers, whether that's managing quality control with computer vision and AI, whether that's monitoring their operations remotely or object detection as well. But if you imagine you had a whole range of industry applications, in the world today, many of these customers and organizations will have lots of silos. So they'll have lots of partners that will do this. And then the challenge often is the data from those siloed applications is not moving around, right? So you might have information from product quality that's not then being fed into your predictive maintenance solution or your platform. And so you're going to have lots of great data, lots of great information, but it's not really creating that optimal value because it's just siloed. And so really the idea is how can you provide that through one platform and let that information flow to really provide that customer with some more informed decision making as well. And then what's really critical on top of that is providing that managed service and that security, right? So having security by design, providing that roof, that cover, the wraparound as well. And so for us, that's a good great way for you guys to remember when you think about private 5G and all the different layers, you've got to think about it as a house. Start with the connectivity as a foundation. Nobody really often sees the foundation of the house, but it's really important to have something great there and then layering that with the industry and the solutions as well. Great. So now I'm talking fast, trying to get through a bit of the content. So let me now move to a couple of examples, and then we'll open up for a few questions if that sounds all right as well. So here's a couple of examples, and we'll start with one. And probably worth sharing, the topic is about tapping into the future of 5G. And I'm going to share with you an example of a 4G private network. And you might be thinking, hey, that's strange. Why are you sharing this example? And it's the point made earlier. The reason why this is a great example to share is that the customer really didn't need a 5G network at this point in time. And we've been working with British Sugar, an organization, if you're not familiar with, produces, let's say, it takes about 8 million tons of sugar beets, turns that into about 1.2 million tons each year. It's running a 24/7 operation across 4 sites, primarily on the east of the UK, very large, complex industrial sites. And so a lot of the sugar you're consuming is probably coming from this factory. So think about how we're enabling that sugar production. They understood since the pandemic they needed to transform and find a way to be much more effective. They didn't have any of the connectivity. They didn't have many of the digital systems they needed to. And so really what they were looking for is a partner to collaborate with and provide site-wide connectivity. And their first use case they wanted to work on was connecting all their workers so they can access their ERP systems and their operational control center so they can monitor the sugar production and the flow of vehicles coming in and out. And as you can see from the quote from the customer here, Paul, it's all about having a control room in someone's hand. And that's just been amazing in terms of the productivity that's driven because they can now control the factory from a connected tablet consistently anywhere they are. And, rather than forcing 5G, which we could have done, and many people probably tried, we said, actually, what's the basic technology they need to start with? And then where do they need to get to in the future? And that's why I thought it's a great example to share. And let me share a video so you can see what it actually looks like and why a customer would value this type of technology as well. So let's try the video.
Heathrow Airport this factory. Logistics is really important to us, so efficiency of making sure we move our products is critical. We needed the connectivity across the site to support that. We already had the partnership with Virgin Media O2 Business. Collectively we came up with a solution to implement this mobile private network. We've definitely seen productivity gain has made a massive change to the way that our individuals work, and this sort of technology can make sure our process is as efficient as possible.
There you go. So it's a great way you can hear from the customer, right? That's straight from the customer, from their experience. And this is a 7-year deployment. We're a number of years into the operations, fully operational service that we've been providing. And it's just a great example when you hear from the customer the value it brings, right? And the language and the thinking they often think about as well, right? And they often say, they just want to focus on producing that sugar, but they need a partner that will help manage and deliver that network. So it's making sure you understand the roles you play. And then maybe another example from the year before as well was the work we've done with the first UK 5G connected hospital. And this is a trust in South London serving, let's say, roughly a population of about 1.3 million people, providing mental health and care services as well. And in this environment, we've been providing a 5G and 5G standalone private network in here, really to demonstrate the value of where private network can help. And a couple of the use cases before we go on to the next slide is really, one, they wanted their clinicians to have better access to their e-observation app and update patient records in real time, which they weren't doing because their previous devices and the solutions weren't connecting frequently and the devices and the connectivity was dropping out. So just by having that consistent connectivity, they were able to drive productivity improvements. And then second, the other key use case, and there's others as well, but they had a number of fridges storing all their medicine, and that medicine was often not tracked temperatures of the fridges weren't monitored as well. There's a lot of wastage. So by deploying a very simple IoT solution on top of the 5G private network, we're able to give them better visibility of the key medicine, understanding where it is, and avoid any spoilage as well. And there's a couple of other examples, but it gives you a feel of some of the things you can do and the difference it can make both in manufacturing and then a whole different vertical in healthcare as well. And so a lot of what I've talked about is what we call dedicated private networks. But just what I'd share with you before we wrap up, where is the future going as well? So when you think about all the messaging I've shared, it's all about having mini mobile networks that reside on a customer's site. And I know we'll talk about this in the next slide, in the next session as well, is that in the future, and as 5G standalone come through, you can leverage that national network as well. So one of the things we did just at the end of last year is our first network slice using our 5G SA capability as well. And so to bring this to life, what is the problem we're solving? So we had a partner and a customer approach us called Hadoop. They provide esport gaming services, and they're actually running an event at the NEC in Birmingham. And they needed ultra reliable connectivity for two things. One, they wanted to broadcast to their YouTube channel, which has millions of followers, the live esports game. And this was in Birmingham at the NEC in a really busy environment. So they couldn't rely on Wi-Fi or the public network without having some quality and control. And second, they wanted to connect 2 or 3 gaming sites across NEC in Birmingham, somewhere nearby in Coventry as well. And so really what they asked us to do is really work with them to provide that reliable 5G connectivity in a secure environment so that they could do that live broadcasting of those games worldwide and really provide that experience as well for the competition. And it just shows you a great example, right? So as the network and the future evolves, you can leverage the national network and effectively take a virtual slice. So it's a physical network, and on top of that, you're virtualizing a slice end-to-end, and then providing that for certain use cases or characteristics, which might be broadcast, it might be for emergency services, and it's really providing it for those customers that can see that value where they need that bandwidth in a particular challenging environment. And this was a good use case or example to end on as well. So maybe to wrap up with some takeaways, and hopefully it's been informative and you've got to hear a bit about some of our experiences and our lessons as well. 5G definitely has a critical role to play in that digital transformation against a vast range of industries. Whilst it might not be for every single one, there's definitely examples that we've shared with manufacturing and healthcare that can really make a difference, and there's many others as well. From our lessons learned, it's really important not to lead in with the technology. The technology is the enabler, but really thinking about those business objectives, right? And talk to the language that the customers really want to hear rather than 5G, 5GSA, or even 6G, right? And then as we've learned, our pivot to partnerships and relying and developing those partnerships is just as critical if you're going to get commercial traction and scale, and that's what we all want to do as well. And making sure you're able to demonstrate that ROI. So with many of those examples, it's really clear. You can do lots of proof of concepts, but in reality, you need to demonstrate the value, and from that, you can then you can scale your business as well. So that was my 25 minutes or 20. We've got a couple of minutes, hopefully, for a few questions, and then we can get back on time, I think.
We've got 4 minutes.
4. There you go. That's all right.
Anybody got questions, Sandeep? Behind you, Sandeep, as always.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's very insightful. In that partnership model that you mentioned, you provide the connectivity and Accenture develops the solutions. Who owns the GTM? Is it you own it or Accenture? And also the post-sale, the relationship with those industry enterprises?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it is a bit of a mix. So it's a joint, I call it a joint go-to-market. So even as we're talking now, we're both engaging with a customer this afternoon, but it's jointly. It depends who has the strongest relationship. So we've already done, effectively in these exercises, and welcome people's views when they've tried this as well. When I've done this a few times, we did an account mapping. So we shared our account presence, understanding who has the best footprint. And in reality, most of us actually have different engagements at different points. VMO2 would be great talking to the CTO, the procurement teams, the connectivity providers. Essential will be have better connections probably in the operations, the CIO part. So in some cases, I think the real value is where you jointly engage with the customer through different stakeholders and then get there together. In other cases, Accenture will support us and we'll lead where we have the relationship. And in a few instances, we'll support Accenture where we don't have a strong relationship. So it's a blend, actually, and we're taking on a case by case.
Right, thank you. Just a very quick one on just of related. Are there more parties involved in that partnership model other than you and Accenture?
So at this
For
point,
example, when I look at it, you had edge computing. Presumably, there will be also core technology foundation. So who provides that and how they are involved in that model?
yeah, no, it's a great question. So we formed the partnership with the two entities, but as you said, there is a partnership ecosystem beyond that. And for a customer session, we're just building the slide with the logos. So next time I present, you'll see the logos I'm going to share tomorrow. But in reality, yes, so VMO2 has partners like Nokia, providing our mobile private network. We have partners like Freshwave, who do all our installation design, partners that help us some of the operations side of it. And then Accenture partnering with Microsoft for that industry edge platform. And then even since the announcement, we've had a number of partners approach us, so, the likes of Android, Apple, Google, some of the broader ecosystem players as well. So, people are supporting us where we can. So there is a broader ecosystem from our respective supply chain as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Can I pass?
Pass it down, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Sandeep. Gabriel Perez from Airspan. A couple of questions for you, if you can share the answer, of course. The first one is regarding the private networks you have deployed so far. If you could say what is the percentage of those networks that are still in, let's say, trial, POC, evaluation phase, and which percentage you can say these are commercial production networks, already in operation for the customers. And the second question is regarding spectrum. What is the percentage of these networks that are relying on your, let's call it public spectrum, allocated spectrum, and which percentage are using or are based on the share spectrum, the 3.8 to 4.2?
Yeah, no, great question. So the last one is probably a little bit more easier. So all of the deployments, like the ones we just shared, British Sugar and others, that's all using our own mobile spectrum. And obviously that in our position creates value. And I know all the other operators have been looking to do that versus some of the low power options you have, especially when you're thinking about radiating and transmitting outdoors, right? Having less sites drives better total cost of ownership. So where we can leverage our national spectrum and allocate it for these private networks, we do. So 100% to date. In some cases, I'm sure we'll be limited in the future, but to date, we've been fortunate where every site we've been able to use our national spectrum, but we are ready to use the other if we need to, and we have in test environments. To your point, I'd say it's a good blend. It varies. So, right now we've got, I'd say probably it's half and half. So across Telefonica, the Telefonica footprint, which we're a part of, say about 60, 70 private network deployments worldwide. And then we have a subset of that, right? And in that, there's many that have been pilots. Some pilots have not progressed. And then on the other hand, there's probably about 25, 30% that have then remained into commercial deployments, right? Like the examples I shared with British Sugar, and there's others that we wouldn't reference publicly, but depending on customer consent. But so I'd say it's a mixture. There's many, I think there's still a lot in pilot, and our challenge is making sure we don't just keep doing lots of pilots. And what we've learned over the process is qualifying better, right? Is it just an innovation exercise where they just want to trial something, or do they have a real need, have an investment, have a real ROI, and that can lead to a multi-year deployment, right? Because that's where we need to be. So yeah, definitely we've been pivoting and focusing our effort on the commercial deals anyway.
Any more questions? Okay, one more.
Hi, thank you, Sandeep. I'm Saundar from Nokia. Of course, glad to hear about the Nokia network participating on the 5G RAN part of it. I have a couple of questions. One is that how do you see the energy, oil and gas segment adoption for private 5G, given that there is a huge amount of investment that is going on in that sector? Second part is how do you see the slicing creating the business models for you, especially on mission critical industries?
Yeah, no, I think great questions. And yeah, as you said, great to be there. So we've been partnering with Nokia and using the Nokia NDAC for most of the examples there to date, right? So in oil mining and gas, we've not managed to secure an oil mining gas customer yet. We're working with many, but I think we're great, so we can able to leverage the Telefonica footprint, who's actually using the Nokia equipment in many oil mining sites in Latin America. So we have references, case studies, examples that have been using that. As you said, there's a number of new plants and sites that are being built, which I think would be great and ideal. So I think there is an opportunity and it's just targeting and landing those with those references that we have globally. To your point on network slicing, I think it was more about the commercial models. Definitely, that's a live debate and topic we're having today, right? Because it's the national network, we've got to make some investments first to enable network slicing and make it available more dynamically. And then on top of that, of course, many customers will have a mobile device, a mobile ARPU, right? So the challenge is working out what is that ARPU. And for me, it's not really about how you do, cost plus pricing, but thinking about what is the solution you're resolving. So, for that broadcast event, an organization might have had to rent a satellite truck or a temporary truck, and that would have cost them a price or a fee, right? So how could you then provide an alternative that would provide better quality and experience, but then also better value than the solution they have today? And I think that will get us to a better point in monetization than just saying it'll be a bolt-on to your ARPU, which is in decline anyway. So it's much more of a premium, a niche-focused approach than an ARPU bolt-on build. So that would be my approach anyway.
And also, you don't have to have a space where you could get all those great big trucks with extra
Indeed,
kids in
yeah,
there.
yeah, that's it, that's perfect.
So far more venues.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you
for
very
that.
much.
Thank you, great.